All right, greetings. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam, Sister Kenyatta Bakir and Sister Aminah Bakir. Have the pleasure of interviewing two phenomenal sisters who are sisters, right? Mashallah. So I would love for you to tell our audience who you are. I know most of the people in our community know who you both are, but I want our general audience, and when I say our general audience, our Muslim and non-Muslim Black family community to know who you both are. And I'm going to start with Kenyatta because she's the oldest. Kenyatta?
I'm gonna let Aminah have it because Aminah is the director. So we gotta, I always get the attention as the oldest. We're gonna let her have it. Let's go to her first, and then I'll introduce.
This is a historical day. I am moved into being the eldest child. I take great responsibility in this position. My name is Aminah Bakir, as Katrina just said, our host, our gracious host. And I am I'm always right. I'm a writer, director, producer, and I'm an associate professor in Pan-African Studies with an emphasis in film and Black people in Islam. And I teach at, I teach at Cal State University, Los Angeles. And so that's a lot of slashes or hyphenates. And my parents were originally in the Nation of Islam, and they converted when I was very young, and I'm a Muslim. I guess if you want to know what I am, I call myself a BMW. I'm a Black Muslim woman, and I'm just excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Aminah. It's amazing for giving us a new acronym as well, BMW, and that's one of the top of the line cars. So thank you so much. Kenyatta.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Kenyatta Bakir, and have a lot of titles too, but just like Aminah's sentiment was, first and foremost, just a Muslim in our community. We're very fortunate for our parents to meet in college and be college sweethearts and then convert to the Nation of Islam like when I was 4. So if I was 4, Aminah was really young. And we don't even remember that. I always joke and say one day they were in MGT FOI outfits and the next day they were regular outfits. They were just the same thing. And when they took Shahada as 2,000 people. So we're from Los Angeles, California. My titles are good titles, but I prefer to just have the title as Muslim sister in the community. But I am a college professor teaching part-time at West Los Angeles College, mostly in the Los Angeles Community College District, longtime educator of the last 29 years, and also producer and actress of Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. And I wear another title. I'm a senior trainer for the Muslim Anti-Racism Collaborative as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kenyatta. So I, again, appreciate both of you being here. And I know that you're here not just to, let everyone know who you are, but to tell us about this phenomenal film that has debuted, if you will, at the Laemmle. Now, it's been out for at least a year, but tell us why this time or this opening at the Laemmle is very important and why folks really need to get out and support the film. And I'll start back with director Aminah Bakir Abdul-Jabbaar.
Well, we have been excited to birth this film to the world. It debuted in the Pan-African Film Festival to sold out crowds in 2018. It won Best Feature Audience Award. And it was, I was honored, I have had a few films come through there. I've had a film called Bilalian that Katrina produced that did exceptionally well there. But, Pan-African Film Festival for me has always been, it's always been a good experience. So to have, one of my first feature, Bilalian, premiere, do very well, and then have another feature come and do very well. It felt very reassuring that I was at least hitting the right marks with my people, with the people who respond to my content. And it's been kind of a trip because even with the film now being at the Laemmle and having people say, oh, I saw your other film, I can't wait to see this film, or people saying, you know, it's interesting to see people say they like my films. So that's actually just like just a trip. But as far as why people, you know, we want people to come see the film now because it's officially birthed into the distribution universe. And so it's available on the website at the Laemmle, but it's available for everybody to see. So where before you would go to a festival, which is always great that people would do that, now we're doing everything virtually. So it just made sense to present the film virtually to the world. And so this is the perfect, I was a big fan of this theater. And so this has always been a dream of mine to show there. And so to show in a way that meets and gets hope, you know, it appears to be getting to our audience is exactly what we want at this point. So I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think we're doing everything virtually. So you're doing your meetings virtually, you're doing your family reunions sometimes virtually. And it just makes sense. We need a movie right now. The Black Muslim community needs a movie right now to, you know, lift us up in our private spaces. So this virtual experience, hopefully brings you a bit of joy.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aminah. Kenyatta, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with the same sentiment. You know, Aminah and I were speaking about it, and I was also speaking about it with my dad, who executive produced the film. And some folks may know, you know, wrote the book Crips, and then wrote the screenplay for South Central, the movie. And when he did that, that was in a time when no one even, especially Black folks, could even come into that kind of arena, especially a Black Muslim male. And he was very, very upfront with, you know, the directors and the producer, because Oliver Stone directed it, with that he wanted Islam to prevail throughout the, you know, the theme, right? And that's what I love about Aminah, is that she's unapologetically Black, unapologetically Muslim, unapologetically woman, right? So, you know, our voices get muffled a lot, or, you know, people don't always listen to us, right? Because there's this assumption that, of course, we know in this country, and also I forgot to mention, I'm a proud Black Lives Matter member. So we know in this country that Black folks don't have any value. They love our culture, right? They love what we do, we sing, we dance, all those things, but they don't love us, right? So this film is really depicting this beautiful life of Muslims, right? And we were fortunate enough to be able to film around the Eid, right? You can already see that in the trailer, so I'm not really giving away the movie. But I just really feel like when you watch the movie, and I've had people who've watched the movie 6 times, right? They went to every night of the Pan-African Film Festival, and then they were like, oh, I've rented it twice, you know, with my friends online. And so it's like that favorite movie, right, that you watch over and over again because you're going to miss pieces, right? And so as a person who was producing on it and an actress in it, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. And every time I see it, I see something different, right? So if I've seen it 50 times, that 50th time I see it again. So it's just the genius that I see her portraying in the directing of this. And it's just, and I'm not pumping that up because she's just my sister. I'm honest in this, because Aminah knows this about me. You know this about me, Katrina. You know me my whole life. Either I say something nice or I don't say anything at all. That's just who I am as a person, right? So that I try to stay that even keel. But I really enjoyed doing this film. And I enjoyed seeing and hearing people DM me and going, I saw the film, it was amazing. Oh my God. People that I thought would never watch the film. I have men who are DMing me and saying this film was amazing, right? So that's what I just wanted to add.
No, that is amazing. And, you know, one of the things that comes to my mind as well, as we think of this interview, and it's something that I had an opportunity to ask both you and Aminah offline earlier, is that when you think of, let's say, a Tyler Perry, if you will, who just recently received Oscar recognition after having films for about 20 years plus, right?
Mhm.
Hollywood did not make Tyler Perry. Like Black folks made Tyler Perry, right? Black Muslims, Black Christians, Black atheists, Black folks showed up and they purchased his films. So how can we as a community, regardless of what our religious denomination is, make Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, make Aminah, if you will, one of the next Tyler Perrys as a filmmaker? She's been doing this for 20 years plus, 20 plus years. She's amazing. So what would you say to the broader Black community?
Well, I mean, I could just speak to some silent wins that people may or may not know about. So we make that film Bilali, and that film shows on BT for a year. And at some point I look up and it's in I think we were always like, where is it at? Is it going to be distributed? Now this, you may not know, but the film was actually, I got a message at one point from an archive when we were in the middle of distributing the film, but I was also in the middle of a divorce and just distracted. And I got a message from these people saying, hey, your film is really great. We want to include it in a time capsule of what happened during this time period, because they thought it was a good representation of what was going on at that time. And so I send them this like VHS of the film, or I can't even remember. It probably could have been a VHS, thinking they're just going to put it inside of a capsule and make it go away, or bury it like a traditional time capsule thing that people do, right? I think, or maybe I made that up. Do you know, I look up and this movie is actually, I'm not going to tell you where it is because we got to put our film out eventually. It's got to go to distribution. But I look up and the film was actually in an archive with Spanish subtitles, which was great. So now when we do the transfer of the film, we don't have to do the Spanish subtitles. I can just use it. So it's an older copy of the film because we since revised it and we had it, you know, there's a broadcast version of it and there's, you know, different versions. But I say that to say, when I saw that, I realized a couple of things. A, they were sending me a message saying, can you send us the script of that movie, because they wanted to translate it. They wanted to, probably for translation. And I was so busy, distracted with my divorce and just work and everything. I never even did it. And they just went forward, right? That's the power of the people. The power of the people. When the people want a story, Bilalian is the truth of that. Bilalian is the truth in terms of the story. Now, Bilalian is the word, of course, but the fact that some people in another whole nother country decided, we're going to put this movie, we're going to translate it, put some Spanish subtitles and get it out. Now, when you talk about Tyler Perry, let me make the connection. Tyler Perry had a really successful career with bootlegging, right? So you would go, I don't know if it would be considered bootlegging, but the bootleggers would give you, because I remember one of my friends that we share in common used to buy Anura. Anura used to get movies. Well, let me just say this. Anura, somebody I knew would get movies.
No names, Aminah, no names.
No names. Let me erase that. And somebody I know would get movies and they would have Tyler Perry. They're the person who introduced me to Tyler Perry. So I would be at their house and they would bring out this DVD and it would be the Tyler Perry plays. And so if we think about how Tyler Perry got to be Tyler Perry, he started with a non-traditional audience, servicing a non-traditional audience in a non-traditional way. Mm-hmm. And then cut to, 20 something years later, and he's getting an honorary Oscar, right? Or I could be wrong about that. But yeah, I think he got honored. Was it honored at the Oscars this year, I believe? Or was it? I don't know. I have to look it up. But he's definitely been recognized with Hollywood recently, right? And so there's a way that when you say, how can we make Aminah or the films that I make get to that level? Well, I would say I'm en route. I'm en route. The community is speaking. And it's not, I don't really look at it as I look at it as I am continuing the tradition of the Black Muslim community in America. Mm-hmm. Do for self, right? So Hollywood doesn't make me, just like Hollywood doesn't make Tyler Perry. I think the success is, if I'm getting to my people, it's just like the independent, the independent musicians now, or rappers. Like, they figured out, like, I don't need to be on a label. If I can get to my audience directly, and it's set up in a way where I can get to my audience directly, then so be it. You even look at other people, like, you know, there are other people that I can think of, like Issa Rae, whose success, you know, of course, the Black community rose up and supported her, and then she gets found, right? Of course, you want to expand your audience. So Hollywood for me would be a tool. It would be a tool to expand to my audience and to reach more people. But I think I want to first congratulate my Muslim community for supporting me 15 something years ago with, I think it's, Katrina, you would know, I don't know how long ago it was, but almost 20 years ago with Bilalian, and then to show up again. There's something called a sophomore slump. I could have messed up on this second film, you know? But there's a gap in between, and that gap in between is me becoming a tenured professor, me having a child, me, you know, acclimating, growing up, and I was still doing other things. But I want to say with great certainty, I appreciate my community for showing up and supporting. I know it's a long way of saying, please go see the movie at the Lemley Theater from now until May 27th so that I can continue to make films. And if you want to do anything, support the film in a way where you can continue to, so I can continue to make films, right? So it's like continuing to make films and to continue. What I also want to do is make sure people see it's possible.
I think you said show up, buy a ticket and show up on, and you can do it online, right? It's easy.
Yes, just show up. That's how you do it. You support us. You support the Muslim Journal. You support, you know, your local Black, you know, Muslim businesses. It's all connected. So I'm just a small piece in that, right? When you support the film, you support the Black Muslim community. You support yourself. It's the same reason I buy, if I see somebody, you know, my community selling a paper, I buy the paper. You know, so it's you know, you subscribe to the Muslim Journal. You make sure you support, because that's how you grow our businesses. Everybody's saying support Black businesses. I definitely agree with that. So when you support Black businesses, you can also support Black Muslim businesses. That's the beautiful thing about being a hybrid.
Definitely. No, that's beautiful, yeah. Aminah. Thank you. You know, Kenyatta, I know you can't top that, but what can you add to this?
Yeah. Like, how do you follow that?
Right.
But I'll try. But don't ever say I didn't try. But I really concur with her sentiment of that. And, you know, we were raised in a family of do for self. Like, you know, both of our parents were teachers, but it was also my dad always had his being an author and having books, like always, our whole life. And I remember when he was finally retiring, I was a principal at the time, we were both working for LA Unified, and he said at 60 years old, like, well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, Dad, you're an author. You know what I'm saying? Write a book. And he wrote 2 more books after that. And he always said, well, thank you for, you know, sometimes the parents need to hear from the children, right? And knowing that, but he always allowed, my parents were very good at allowing that creativity, right? There's a VHS that we have of Aminah that she's 10 or 11 years old, and we're in our backyard on our original family home that we still own, alhamdulillah, right? And it's showing her directing our younger sister and brother, Isan and Donald, playing like cowboys and, at that time, Indians, right? And my dad has the camera, right? Because he was an English teacher. And so he would be able to take home these huge cameras, in those days they were huge, right? And I remember we would have Thanksgiving and, family events, and my dad would always like just prop the camera up. And after a while we'd be like, could you just turn the camera off? But we didn't understand what kind of history he was really capturing. And then with our mother passing, 29 years ago, we now get to still hear our mother's voice. We get to see her body. We get to have all of that. We're just so blessed by that. But more so than even that, it showed how my dad saw at that young of an age, this 10-year-old had the ability to direct. And he didn't say, oh, you're a girl, or you can't do it. We didn't live in that kind of space. We grew up like, well, what do you want to do? You just do what you want to do, right? And I remember being in the house and seeing him filming that and thinking, that's kind of weird, but like not really weird, because that's kind of like how our family dynamic was. So I love that he did that, and we still have that tape. I mean, 30 some odd years later, it's 46. So 36 years later, she's got this document of her. And I love what she started to say, because I always said, I remember we had a conversation some years ago, and she would say, oh, when I started directing 20 years ago, I said, no, you didn't. Your first debut was at 10. And so now she's saying that, I'm like, you've been a director, right? You might have honed in on your craft, but you've been a director. So I would say as well, how you support the film is, of course, if you know somebody, they say they can't afford the $12, pay for them and shoot it to them in the DM. Spread the messaging. I know some people are like, if I see one more of her Boost post that comes through my timeline, we're trying to spread this worldwide. So almost 300,000 people have seen some kind of an ad that's related to Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. And then lastly, I wanted to just say this. Maybe about, 13, 14 years ago, I had a dream that Aminah received an Emmy, that we were at the Oscars. And I don't dream like that. I'm not a vivid dreamer. I dream like people are flying, crazy stuff. So when I do dream. And so I remember calling her and telling her about this dream years ago. And I said, I dreamt that you got an Emmy. And it was clear, it was vivid. There was no question about it. And so I told her from that day, I don't know if she remembered this, I was like, so I'm claiming it, like the Christians say, I'm claiming it, and you're going to get an Emmy, right? And so that's where we've gone. And this is well before Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. So we've gone into this trajectory. So you guys buy this film so she can get the Emmy. So she can bring the Emmy back home, like how the NBA and the NFL people do when they, get their Heismans and all of that. Bring it back to the house, to the people.
Mashallah.
Mashallah.
That is beautiful. And, speaking of, my next question was actually going to be about films like Muslimah's Guide to Marriage that are showing love, Black Muslim love. Aminah talked about that. But in this interview, I can see the Black Muslim love just between two sisters, as your oldest sister, Kenyatta, is uplifting you, Aminah, and reminding the audience about memories that you may not have even remembered, it's like, yeah, I remember when you were this age and this is what you were doing. No, you've been a filmmaker since you were 10. So with that said, and again, this is a Muslim Journal article or interview, but it's also for NNPA, for the Black press. And so what would you say to, again, people who have not seen Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, and they're accustomed to seeing, Black Muslims are a marginalized group, right? When people think of Black folks, they typically think of our Christian brothers and sisters, being in the church. Or they think of, if they think of Muslims, they think, specifically of the nation, and it's that infinity time where Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X were alive, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So what would you say, again, to the broader audience about, supporting Muslimah's Guide to Marriage? I'm not Muslim, why should I watch this film?
believe I mentioned it in the article, or at some point it's been mentioned that this is the first Black Muslim romantic comedy. It's the first romantic comedy about Black Muslim life. And I'm assuming, I say that to say, you know, I didn't go on, it's funny, when I made the film, I didn't even consider that. I just made a film that I wanted to see. And it's great to see the accolades that come with that, or the recognition that comes with that. But that's great. Thank you for that, for people recognizing and lifting that up. I think that what we know about the Black Muslim community is typically focused on, you mentioned Malcolm X, sometimes Elijah Muhammad, of course Muhammad Ali, you might get Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But when I say those names, and I'm thinking of Betty Shabazz, maybe Betty Shabazz, but we know others, right? Like Sister Clara Muhammad. We know Wallace Worthy Muhammad. You know, there are other people that we could lift up that I think should and could and, should have been lifted up in those conversations as well. But what we do see and presented of Black Muslims typically focuses on the names I mentioned, but there's something about that I want to lift up, which is that I love all those people, admire, respect. What I want to make sure we do with what Muslimah Guide to Marriage is doing is showing, I hope is showing Black Muslim love, and it's showing rank and file members, and it's humanizing us outside of having to be excellent, typically in public. So most of the people I just mentioned are people who had to be in public in a scrutinizing way, in a very in really bizarre times, right? So they had to have a persona, right? That's a persona, as well as just like, when I think about all of those people, I think about Black excellence, but Black Muslim excellence, right? Black Muslim excellence. So love that, but I want to talk about, what does it mean to be a people who've always been recognized in a way, in terms of media representation, typically, that doesn't give us a place to just be humanized. I mean, I'm not saying those roles would, what I mean by that is that we need to have more movies about Black Muslim life, because that allows for us to normalize Black Muslims outside of being martyrs, outside of being, having to be excellent. There's a quote in a movie, someone says, I think it's in Queen and Slim, when he says, the character says, something about, why do we always have to be excellent, right? So I'm not taking anything away from being excellent. I'm more saying, when people are allowed to just be, right? Because that's what it is, right? I came to this interview 10 minutes late, right? There's a way that you can sympathize and become, you can see yourself in that, right? Instead of admiration. Admiration is fine, but I want us to have stories that focus on rank and file people as well, because then that allows us to grow in terms of perception, but also it allows us to be human in a way that I think allows us to just be normal, right? And that is okay. It's okay. The film is about a woman, Black Muslims Guide to Marriage is about a woman trying to save her marriage. That's a struggle, right? She's in the middle of Ida, or about to get a divorce. She is in a struggle. So you don't have to be a Black Muslim to watch this film. That is a universal emotion, right? To be able to struggle, and at some point, if you're struggling in your marriage. And for me, the movie, even though it's like I've mentioned before, it's a love letter to my community, and I definitely want my community to see it. I believe this movie is just like with the other stories I mentioned, other people I mentioned earlier. If it gives us something, if you look at the film and you look at the way love is held in that film, which is not really normalized in Black Muslim life, typically is we're not really usually going to be on display for that. It allows others to relate to us. And like you said, this is for, I think, for a Black press organization. If you're Black, you can see this movie and you can see yourself in this movie. You know, I think it's just about telling a human story. Hopefully, if I've done my job, you should be able to relate to it in terms of the human element of it.
That's beautiful, you know, because I was going to ask you too to tell us more about the film, and you have, you know, oftentimes we are not seen as human, if you will. We're subhuman, right? We're either a superhero or we're always that stereotype. So it's just beautiful for us to have a film about love, like you said, and life, you know. So
which Black people don't get to. I'm sorry, but that's what I was trying to get across in another conversation or article. I think is that I teach. So what I teach in the Black Studies department at Cal State LA, I teach about Black people in American cinema, and you can see very consistently that Black people in general are left out of the conversation of romantic love. We're even just left out of the conversation of love. There's this film called Birth of a Nation, and in that film, in I think it's 1919. When you look at that film, was that 1914? Anyway, I don't even care. But this film, Birth of a Nation, is directed by this white guy called D.W. Griffith, which basically romanticizes the KKK. You don't see Black people all in the film, or white people in blackface, and you don't see Black people being able to love each other. But you do see Black people loving whites more than they love themselves. And it's things like that. So when you start, that film actually is considered one of the first, if not the first, Hollywood blockbuster movie, right? So when the first Hollywood blockbuster movie shows up, it's showing Black people loving white people more than they love themselves. But the whole movie is a love story. It's a love story between multiple white characters. But Black people are not allowed to love in terms of romantically, and love themselves and love others, love people, their own Black people. That's a tragedy. And you would really think that would be corrected, but I think that's one of the reasons Tyler Perry, it would have been corrected sooner, but that's one of the reasons Tyler Perry, I think, was so successful, because he was addressing a forgotten audience of Black women, right? Church women, right? And to my, somewhat, right? So I think it shouldn't take 2020, 2021, where we finally are, normalizing that for Black. I mean, I want to say this, and I'll be quiet, is that if I can just be a part of the conversation of normalizing Black Muslim love, then I hope I've done my job.
Well, that's amazing. And so if you haven't been intrigued already with this interview thus far, then I don't know what to tell you, but you definitely have to go out and see Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. You have to. And Kenyatta, tell us, where do we see this movie at? Where do we go? How do we find it?
You can go on many platforms. So we have our social media, which is on IG, is Muslimah's Guide to Marriage Film. On Facebook, Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. And then also our YouTube is Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. And then our website is muslimahsguidetomarriage.com. So if you even just Google Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, everything will come up. But we're at the Lamley Theater. You can go to Lamley Theater and you can put Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. You guys could take a picture if you're able to view this or hear this, and you can see Muslimah's Guide to Marriage is in the back where Aminah is sitting. She has our poster. Love our movie poster. This is our second one, and we were blessed and honored to have Art Sims to do the key art on this, the guy who did Clockers and many other movies. And so we are elated and excited for people to see the film, also to have conversations. People have watch parties about it, and people are excited. Like Aminah was just saying, to just celebrate and show Black Muslim life in a positive way, right? So if you from Philly, if you're from Chicago, wherever you're from, this isn't just LA Muslims, right? Because people are like, oh, that's the LA Muslims, this is the West Coast Muslims, right? Because, we've been told that we have accents. I don't think we have an accent, but been told we have accents, right? And they say it's the way that we speak, especially the guys, right? When they say core, and, especially if you're from LA, right? You can hear it from LA, dudes. But a lot of people may say, oh, that's just the LA thing. No, when you see this film, I don't care where you're from, especially in the United States, it's going to be so relatable because of the comedy in there and the things that you see in the masjid, right? Or even if you're not Muslim. I have people all the time, since growing up, my cousin, he's Muslim, or, some people converted in jail. Some people just convert, right? Or some people were like how they would be our cousins. Like we have cousins who are Christians, right? And they are saying that they have family that's Muslim, right? So every Black person probably has in their family or in their peripheral somebody that's Muslim, right? And so they've always wondered about it, right? Because we go away and we go pray, right? Because we pray 5 times a day, right? And we'll be like, oh no, we can't have no pork, that kind of stuff, right? So seeing this film is only an hour and a half, and I always tease the men too, because I love our brothers, our Black brothers. We love Black men. We love them. Okay, so people will say, "Well, I saw a snippet of this," and it's like, nope. We love Black men. Let me say that again. Black men are winning for us, right? And so we are showing them in a positive light as well. So if you have a wife or intended girlfriend, whomever you are, whatever you do, women love romantic comedies. If you want to get in good with your mate, go take them to see the romantic comedy. Download it, and you guys, when you put your kids to bed or whatever that is, watch the film and enjoy it.
And here's the thing: the film is PG-13, so you don't have to put your kids to bed.
Well, the baby babies, maybe the little ones, because you might just want to have just a date night in your house.
But I do think we should normalize that. I love the idea of people making the film a date night, for themselves. I think it would be something to see. I would love an event like that where we actually had date night watching the film. Maybe we look into that. But I just wanted to lift up something Kenyata was talking about when she was saying people have family members. If that's okay, Katrina, can I lift up something she was talking about in terms of family members?
Yes, of course, please.
Oh, so being Muslim, family members being Muslim. So the film, it makes me think about the cast. So I'm thinking of B.T. Kingsley, who plays Kareem in the film. And B.T. Kingsley is not Muslim, but his sister is. And so he took so everybody who came to this film, even, everyone that came to this film came with such reverence for our community. And I do think that comes from the greats that we mentioned, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and on and on. So they came with a lot of respect. But it is interesting. So B.T. Kingsley shows up and he's like, my sister is a Muslim. And he basically decided, or he had his sister help him, I believe, with preparing this parts in there. He has to do like prayers and things. And I mentioned this in another talk back, but in that performance of a prayer, he has to kind of make a mistake because it's something to do with his character. He's struggling with being able to say Arabic. But he had learned this prayer, the Al-Fatiha, so perfectly that we had to kind of teach him how to unlearn it. So he could mess up, So it's moments like that I think about, and I think about like the Black community, and I know this, the statistical data will show you, like the Black community has great reverence for the Black Muslim community. So, there's a sentiment for, even if Black people may not identify as being Muslim, some may not, they will have a sentiment, they will have regard for Black Muslims. They may be going to Black Muslim stores. They're aware of Black Muslims, right? So I think there's something about having a cast where primarily Black people, Black folks, and even though we have a character we have a young lady in the film who makes her debut, Medina Britt, who who is Muslim, and she plays Kenyatta in the film. And what was beautiful about having like a Muslim actor, mixed in with non-Muslim actors who were playing Muslims, was to be able to see this woman who was just starting out as being an actress, having all these professional trained actors looking to her for guidance on how to be Muslim in the film. So something about that for me was very interesting, and it also just kind of continues. If you're thinking about it, it's the Muslim Journal audience would be thinking that's dawah, that's dawah, or that's people getting to learn about Islam in a way that is prescribed by us to be doing, but not forced, right? So this movie is not trying to convert anybody, but I do think. Let me say this because I don't know if it's been said. So the film is romantic comedy, right? So when I showed the movie the original time to get notes from friends of mine who I went to school with, who went to UCLA Film School with, I remember being in the audience, and when you get notes, it was a private screening, very small screening. We were just getting notes on what to change and corrections. And my friends and associates, people there, they didn't know that they were like afraid to laugh, because I remember there was a moment where they were like, and then all of a sudden they realized, oh, we can laugh, right? So that's something else about this film I really enjoy, is that we don't really get to see Black Muslims being humorous, if I'm not mistaken, right? We tend to have to be presented as very serious, right? So there's something about a subject that's comedy that I've really been enjoying that genre right now, and having us Black Muslims in that space has just been quite the same way. I think, not to keep using Tyler Perry, but the same way I think Tyler Perry was able to take the Black woman and, make this sort of comedic, also serious, but there was a way that I think there was something about his depiction of Black women and even Black life that I think there's something about when it comes from Black people, that image of Blackness, there's an authenticity that others who are in that life or people who appreciate authenticity can connect to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's amazing, and the fact that both of you are professors as well is extremely enlightening, because I could, with Kenyatta saying, you're like, okay, look, it's PG-13, so we can all see this. And, as a Pan-African, studies, I was going to say director, professor, and then Kenyatta's early childhood, and she's coming in like, wait a minute, but the littles, and it's amazing. And so with that said, you had mentioned earlier that one of your earlier films, Bilalian, was put in this time capsule, and 20 years later, here we are about to see us reveal. But coming back to Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, you had mentioned that in an earlier interview that Dr. Rose Aslan, a professor of global religions, was so enamored by Muslimah's Guide to Marriage that she included it in her chapter book. Tell us more about that.
Well, I think how that happened was I was asked pre-pandemic to come and show the film at a religious studies conference. And I think it was in San Diego, and it was a conference where all the different departments from all over, people from Harvard, people from everywhere, the Midwest, all colleges who teach religious studies were there or had an interest in religious study. And so I showed the film, and it was in San Diego. So I go to the screening, and people were watching the film. And when it was over, there were people that came up to me to talk about, hey, bringing the film to, pre-pandemic to their communities, or to their schools, excuse me. But then some people were saying, yeah, I want to write about this film. And so Rose, I believe, was one of the people, Professor Aslan actually, was one of the people who, should be Dr. Aslan, was one of the people who asked about writing about the film. And, it happened, and I just kind of went on. I'm a professor too, so I just, takes us, people have, it's a lot to write. So people take time, people go on sabbatical to do it. I got a message, and she was like, I want to write about this film, and I can't find it. I need to find it. So I shoot her the movie so she can find it. She'd already seen it, but she had to write about it. She wanted it again to write about it. And I think her focus was on prayer in film, and maybe it was Islam or the way people pray in film. But I haven't actually read it, but I did take, what I took from it was her, you know, I don't know if the word is honored, but because I was deeply honored that she wanted to even write about it. And as a professor, I know what that means for other professors want to ask you to write about something or write with them, or she was asking to write about it. So I haven't read it, but what I know was that just to be included in that kind of conversation, like, I mean, that kind of stuff is like, I'm geeking out here, but that's like an academic conversation about the film. It's one thing for the film to be funny and to be entertaining and for people to like it. I totally love that. But in just some, like in a professor way, to have another professor want to write about the film was really, really, you know, I really thought that was I was very happy that we would have that kind of impact. And you know, I've been doing this a long time, so I don't know if you know, but Balalian has had similar impact. And there's the bandwidth on Balalian became so great. It just became overwhelming. Like the response, people wanted it. Even to this day, I'll get a message and people will be like, can I see it? And, you know, being able to go to different schools. I know we went to Harvard, we went to Dartmouth, we went all over with that movie, not to mention just the community's respect and reverence. And I know it won an award too at the Pan-African Film Festival, Visionary Award, and got great reviews and in the trades, I believe in Variety. So when people write about your film or write about your work, that is like another level of, I guess, I don't want to say success, but it's another level of contributing to the zeitgeist. So that's just, you know, contributing to the culture, right? So I don't know if that's, so I'm excited to see what Professor Aslan wrote about, but I'm also just excited that we're in this conversation, and especially in the middle of a pandemic. So to be in the middle of a pandemic and people being able to see this film, hopefully there'll be more written about it. I think it just does what we already know, which is contributes to the voice. I think that the Black Muslim community, we know we can say this. We were the first to openly, one of the first, if not the first, to openly challenge white supremacy in this country, right? So I think it's important for us to always be able to, you know, think about our work as something that has to radiate, you know, outside of just our community, because it's kind of a teaching tool, right? And so there's a way that, like, even though it's a romantic comedy, I think, which may not be considered something serious, I think there's a way that when you watch Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, when they write about, when academics write about it, what that does is it says what we already know our Black Muslim community was doing and has done and was, you know, kind of definitely ahead on, is say that Black lives matter, right? Black people matter. So when people write about it, that just cements it.
Definitely, and it leaves a lasting impact on academia and historians as well. So that's a beautiful answer, Aminah, and thank you. And I do want to pull our producer, Kenyatta Bakir, in from a producer standpoint. You know, what would you say to professors like, you know, Professor Abdul-Jabbaar, Bakir Abdul-Jabbaar, and others who can bring their students to this movie online, right? Like, how can the professors bring their students to this movie? Like, what's the significance of that?
As a professor for the last 20 years this year, 21 years, you're always looking for content to be able to share with students. And I teach from different modalities. So I believe in multiple intelligence by Howard Gardner. And what it says of his 8 intelligences of how people are able to relate, you know, linguistically, you know, it could be visual, it could be auditory, whatever that looks like, right? Naturalistic. So as a person who teaches and now being teaching online, right? It's like you have to like pull the student in, right? It's not just your charisma anymore of just being able to just be the sage on the stage, right? And I'm a very collaborative professor. You know, I teach child development, so it's like everything is hands-on, right? But whatever I do, and just in general, and just who we are as Bikers, we're very like animated. Like everybody that meets us, they're like, you all are animated. Yeah, we got that really honest from our mother and our father. So we're very fortunate. But what I would say is that this is so easy. Now you can just pay, download, show the film right there on your computer while your students are watching. And that could even be a class, right? And you can have a discussion. You have discussion questions from it, right? There's so much that you can extend from this, right? Whatever field that you're teaching, it just doesn't have to be from, you know, a religious aspect, right? I did 1 year of a doctorate at Claremont School of Theology before I had got to Tendonitis. So I got to talk about, you know, the film at one point, you know, that we did and what we were doing, and people were elated to hear about it. So this gives folks an opportunity to kind of, you know, show not just Black Muslim life, but just showing Black folks, right? Because of course it's Black Muslims that we're talking about, but as we all have been talking about, Aminah said it so eloquently, and it really resonated with me being a Black Lives Matter member and our parents being civil rights activists. We don't know anything else but to counteract white supremacy. Like that's who we are. That's how we come in the room, right? Like it's not even a thought. I remember one person said to me, "You're becoming very visible on social media as you know call out white supremacy. Aren't you afraid?" No, I'm not afraid because I fear Allah at the end of the day. And even when the FBI came to my door, you know, I was like, I've done nothing wrong, but speak the truth, right? So, and I remember telling my father about the conversation. He's like, oh, that happens. He was so cavalier about it. It was hilarious. But I think what it is like she said, we were the first to stand up, right? If we think about the people who were murdered in that time, you know, for standing up for the injustice of how white folks treated Muslims. They treated Black Muslims horribly in that time, right? We have, you know, Robert Stokes that was murdered, who's Sister Daima Jordan's husband, who was murdered in 1962, right? And so Muslim Arc, we did a roundtable, and Aminah helped us with that, and we were so grateful that she was there, as you know, to help us in the directing side of it. But you will see in this film, you know, instances are, you know, alluding to, you know, our past, right? So we come from the foundation, and Katrina, you do too, of we believe we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, right? And knowing that we're our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? We're college educated, we're very vocal, right? And we do the opposite of what everybody thought we would do. We come in a room covered and okay with that. Like, here I am in my full kimar and all of my glory, and I'm going to call out your white supremacy to your face, right? And so this movie is calling it out, but also the most tender moments that I love is showing the love of our community, the love of who we are. If you've ever gone to a Black masjid, I don't care what part of the United States, most Black masjids that we have visited, even when we were talking about the film or passing out, they act like you're their cousin, right? Or it's your uncle or your aunt. Everybody is loving. That's how the Black community in general is. So that's the more shameless plug that I would say. But we think that the professors will have joy of being able to show this film. Maybe they show parts of it, half of it, then they have to show it again, the other part when they come back to class. But go ahead, purchase it. Professors, as a professor who always is looking for content, you're going to enjoy having that content. Oh, and one last note, I had 9 professors who have a religious background. One of them was just wishing me Eid Mubarak and showing his new book. And I shared with him, and he teaches at LMU, I shared with him the link. And he was elated and thankful. And it's like, oh, I'm always looking for new content. And so the other folks felt the same way as well.
But I need to also mention that there are people in the academic world, there are professors, Muslim professors, women specifically, who have been looking out, even though the invite that I got to the Religious Studies Festival event was from, I believe it was from a man, I believe he was a white man taught in religious studies, but there have been several Muslim, some Black, but Muslim professors. I mean, there are so many. There are lots of them who have reached out, and we've had people champion. And when the film showed in New York, we had I think a PhD candidate. I'm sure she's a professor now. I'm sure she's a professor if she was at that level. But she was lifting the film up in a Muslim professors chat group, and I had to go in the chat because I never am on Facebook, and I get in the chat, and it says, all these professors who are Muslim women wanted to know about what films to show. And so I come in and when, and they said where, and I mentioned that the film was showing. So it's happening, it's already happening. It could be happening more, but I also want to lift up Dr. Suad, who brought the film to the University of Michigan. So Dr. Suad, who did Muslim Cool, and who has a new project out. Let me lift up her. She has a new project out called the Ummi Archives, which is dedicated to her mother, that just came out, I think, in April last month. She brought the film to University of Michigan, and it was, so that's another way you can reach out, and we can come when the world opens back up, or you can reach out and we can do a Q&A while the film, a Zoom Q&A while the world is still closed. I wanted to just say there's many ways that professors can lift up. I'm also in the discipline of film, and I recognize very well that film in this country is taught from a Eurocentric and white perspective. And it's very important that movies about Black people, told by Black people, be brought into that discussion, to show others, to be a part of that conversation, but to make sure people understand the importance of our stories and the importance of teaching, that our stories are happening at this point in current, right? So I would like to see more of that kind of outreach, like film schools reaching out to show the movie so we can, be a part of that conversation. I think it's going to come. I'm a graduate of UCLA and USC. Bilalian showed at UCLA at one point. They actually had it come archive. I think it was UCLA Archive had it come and show. And it should be like an old rough copy of that in the archive. But the last thing I wanted to say and make sure I mentioned really quickly is we didn't talk about him in one of our talkbacks, but we should lift up like Glenn Plummer. I have to make sure I mention that my dad makes this movie called South Central 20-something years ago, and Glenn Plummer's the star of that movie. And I was able to get Glenn Plummer in this movie from my father's relationship with Glenn from South Central. So Glenn was very respectful. We shot the film. Our first day one of production was Eid. We shot Eid many years ago. And I remember Glenn being there and his reverence for our community. And I realized it was kind of like there's a moment where, everybody was doing their job, but people were, to be completely transparent, there was a moment, it could have went a whole different way, right? That's what I'm saying. Because this was me basically making a comedic script, and we're in a very serious and respectful time. And so I just love that Glenn trusted me. I love that he came aboard. I remember we had our reading here in my house, in my office at home. And at the reading, having Glenn here and of the script and him giving me notes, which I love, which when people give you notes, that means they care about your work. So I have a strong feeling that, I hope at the very least that this film will have an impact greater than we ever could have dreamt, and maybe hopefully continuing the dream of our ancestors.
Oh, definitely. And I do want to ask two more questions because I know time is valuable and just appreciate you both being here. And before I go on, one of the last questions will be that just because we mentioned about, professors bringing their students to the film, we want people to still show up. And I'll just say this now. You debuted your film on May 12th, which ironically was the day of Eid. You mentioned that you started filming a couple of years back on Eid, and now to come back full circle and have it debut at the Lamley, on May 12th. It's a 2-week run. Tell folks what website they should go to. And again, buy the ticket. We keep saying this, but it's so critical that why is it so critical for folks to show up during this 2-week run?
We're going to be an infomercial for you right now, which is like running across the screen. And it should be, I don't know how to spell. Is it L-A-E-M?
It's L-A-E-M-A-L-L-E, and they can go to lamley.com.
Okay. It's 2 L's?
I thought it was 2 L's. That's the way I've been spelling. I hope it's
I've been spelling it wrong.
It is LAMMLE.com.
I done added something to it. So read it off again.
It's LAEMMLE.com.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, okay. So LAEMALLE.com, right? Did I say that right? Is that right?
No, I think it's okay. She put it on the screen. LAEMMLE.
Oh, I'm adding an A to it. That's the problem. So I got the first part right, but I keep adding a after the M's and ALE. But it's LAEMMLE.com. They can go to Lamley, or they can also go to Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. You Google that, it's going to come up. It's the Lamley is going to come up. Our website is going to come up. All of our social media. That's me behind the scenes going to learn analytics that I had no idea about, but we've learned. So yes, so anything you Google Muslimah's Guide to Marriage is going to come up, and you will be able to find it. And also you can go to lamley.com, LAEMMLE.com. So, but it's also important. It's also important to go to this film in these 2 weeks, because we want to have as much of this. I guess it's the participation of people purchasing the film, right? It shows that people want this film, right? The beautiful thing when we showed at the Pan African Film Festival, which I'm seeing pictures now, and people are like, oh, where were you on? I don't know, it was a blur. As a producer, I was just there. And I didn't even think about, I always tell people this, I didn't care about a producer credit. All I wanted was my sister to be happy. That was the only reason why I committed to that. We were both on summer vacation from being professors. And I always say this, and people probably have heard this a million times. We filmed in 12 days. Feature films, people, do not film or do not get filmed in 12 days. It's doesn't even happen. That's an amazing feat for her to do that. That happens in 3 months typically. But I didn't know, because I was a novice, right? I've acted 30 some odd years ago, but this isn't my world, right? So when she said, this is what we have to do, this is the script, we've got 12 days, that's what we did, right? So when I bounced it off of other people, they were like, that's amazing. You don't even know how did that even happen? It was a lot of work, right? But it was good work. And every scene counted, right? Every actor and actress in the film, every extra, every location site that we had, every person's name that was mentioned, every credit that we saw, people that we had help us with, even the clothing. A good dear friend of ours, Pilani Bell, helped us with the clothing, right? A lot of the clothes were my clothes, the Muslim clothes, because I have a lot of clothes, right? So we did what we had to do. We had catering,
Muslim catering,
but done by a Muslim woman, Sister Shahida. We looked at particularly Black Muslims, but we also looked at Black folks, because if we were going to do a film, we wanted to make sure that we included the community. We weren't going to just say, like some folks do, oh, I'm gonna make a Black film, but I'm gonna hire all of the white cast. No, that's not what we're doing. We had some white folks in it, but just like how we say in Black Lives Matter, they don't get to lead. They get to be allied and do what we ask them to do. So that's
and behind the scenes, we had a lot of women working for us. There's a woman that edited the film. So people who don't get, like in Hollywood, like women are not getting a lot of opportunities. The DP's name is Jerry Henry. He's African American. He's a really, really well sought out. He's a very well-known DP. But I went to film school with Jerry, Black guy who helped, reduce his rate to help me. But we had a lot. It was like a family affair. And I just, I wanted to lift up something really quick too, was to mention that Howard, the university, after I went to that religious studies conference, Howard University reached out because they were going to have the Muslim Student Association conference. We were supposed to, right before the world shut down in April, I think it was April 2020 or April, I don't remember what year that was, but right before we shut down in Los Angeles, I think in March, I was supposed to go to Howard in April. They had it, they were scheduling it and everything. I was coming to Howard. The film was coming to Howard. I was so excited about it. I was telling all the people, I was telling people, like, I'm so excited because to me, I've been to other universities, but I felt like this is really would have been really a mark, a check mark or bucket list right there. So I guess I'm saying, I'm just adding to that as Black people, we support Black people. You know what I mean? There's a way that and Muslims, we support Muslims. So I think if Muslims support Muslims, Black people support Muslims, Black people support Black people, if we can have all of those folks come together, we should have success with this. But yeah, please go to our website and go to LAEMMLE.com and look up Muslimah's Guide to Marriage and up until the 27th, and hopefully we will see you there.
And if folks can't remember any of that, you can always, DM, me, Haja Kenyatta. You can find me on any of the social media platforms as well. So however way you get this information, don't hesitate. Reach out to somebody. Somebody is going to tell you how to get the film, right? All the links are on all of our social media. Even when you Google it, even if you put Muslimah, you're like, I can't remember the rest of that. If it's going to come up under Muslimah, it'll go Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. You go, oh, that's it, right? So just remember film, remember Muslimah, and folks will be able to get the information. We also have shirts, long sleeve shirts that we have. We have kimars, scarves that are orange and have the Muslimah's Guide to Marriage logo as well.
I'm wearing one.
She's wearing one. We have masks too that say Muslimah. So there's many ways to be able to support as well. So we're really, really excited. We want folks to just come out and just see it. So just think about, I'm your cousin, Aminah's your cousin, right? And you're going to see your cousin's film, and y'all gonna hang out, right? And go see the film. So be safe, right? Because it's COVID times, but be safe about it. But we'd love for you to just see the film. And no matter who you are, Christian, Muslim, you're gonna be able to laugh. We've had Christians, we've had agnostic people who don't align with anything text me and be like, that's the funniest thing I've seen in forever. That was hilarious, right? And just also to the Muslims too, because some people think, that we're making light of things or anything like that. This film is respectful, okay? When we got our NNPA rating, which is a really hard thing to get, we got a PG-13. The woman called us and said, this is a great romantic comedy. But there are some words and some things that we're talking about. So high school students and junior high students should see this film because we're talking about some of the things that affect our communities. And so we don't want to just sweep things under the rug and just act like things aren't happening, right? We want to be a support for our children, right? And having them, when they're asking these questions, to be able to get answers and support as well. So there's things that we allude to in the film, right? But realizing we're not disrespecting anything that has to that relates to Muslims or Black people. So I just want to make sure that that's clear too.
It's respectful. It's also very real and authentic. And there are things that happen in the film, some of those stories. I mean, I'm from a family of teachers. I'm surrounded by teachers, and some of those stories is an amalgamation of what people have shared with me in private. So I tried to share some of their moments, private moments, in an anonymous way through some of the characters and some of their struggles. The Muslimah's character is, Muslimah is who's played by Ebony Perry. You know, IndieWire found her very funny in terms of their review. She plays the Muslimah character. Ebony plays the Muslimah character with great care. And she's an attendance counselor, and she runs into some challenges, you know? So those are the things that I think Kenyatta was alluding to in terms of, like, you know, having dialogue around some of those challenges. Lastly, I don't know if we ever talk about this, but the fact that the whole, you know, soundtrack, most of the soundtrack, a large percent of the soundtrack is made of Muslim artists. We have Akil from Jurassic 5, who did the title track for song Muslimah. It has a title track song, which was such a big deal to me. And then we have several. We have Ebony Khan, Kenyatta. Who else? We have Ebony Khan does beautiful. We have three songs from her.
Yeah. And then we also have Asa Nasira, Nicolette, Lady Nasira, who does, you know, 2 tracks on there. And then we also have Shaka Jihad, may Allah be pleased with him and grant him Jannah, Amin, who passed away after the film had been done. And we were very fortunate to be able to, you know, get him buried within, you know, a timely fashion as well. So it was very sad for us. And he did some beautiful songs, and you see it in the trailer, is his song that's really paying homage to, you know, South Central. And this film is based on that. Yeah. So
he actually, I think, I'm sorry, Joe, I think he made it to the premiere too. So it was good. Yeah,
he made it to the premiere. He got to do to the Pan-African Film Festival, but he just passed away about a couple of years ago. So it was a very abrupt, you know, passing, but he got, you know, a lot of, you know, great feelings out of being able to do this film and, you know, to share his music. So now we are in the process of working on our soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
So, just confirmed with who we talked about earlier. I'll tell you that later, Aminah, but they are on it. So we're in the process. So you guys can be looking forward to a soundtrack soon too. That'll inshallah be on a lot of platforms because the music is great. I've heard a lot of musicians and artists come to me and be like, wow, the way you guys blended that soundtrack in was amazing. And we also had our father is multifaceted, multi-talented. So he also has a couple of his songs in the film as well. One is LA's the Place. And if you ever are around us as you know, his children, if he ever plays that song, we know the song by heart, and it's a really cool song. So it's really paying homage to LA as well. So.
Definitely, and the fact that your father is you know, again, you both have talked about him as the patriarch of the family, right? He wrote and directed Crips, which became South Central, the movie in 1992. You mentioned Ronald T. Stokes, who it will be 59 years, actually. It was May 13th, marked 59 years since his passing, and his death is significant in the fact that not only was he Sister Daima's, you know, late husband, but his death, as Aminah had chronicled in her first film, was like the start of Malcolm X's whole movement here in Los Angeles with the civil rights and the police. We're talking about police injustices today with, you know, Black Lives Matters, but it was the community, the Muslim community out here in Los Angeles who started that with Ronald T. Stokes' death. So, you know, one question I do want to ask, and I mean, I'll let you speak, but the last question, Well, before I ask the last question, go ahead, Aminah, because I know you had unmuted and you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I was only just going to say that I don't know how to follow that, because I'm glad you lifted up the conversation about Ronald Stokes and about the resistance that Malcolm X leads in terms of anti-police brutality in Los Angeles. And I think that that connection to, you know, Black Lives Matter, and just like making sure that the movement, just making sure that you know, that to me is very important in talking about Sister Naima. And so for me, like, that is important to lift up in this moment, because what I think I do as a director and a writer, hopefully the goal is to give voice to the voiceless and to do a water carry of those stories. There'll be more, there are others besides me. I'm not the only one. There are more coming. There were more before. You know, sometimes in the history books we leave out that there were other movements and filmmakers, you know, that were Muslim. Those get left out of the writing. But you know, I don't know if people give my dad enough credit for his contribution to South Central, and what did it mean to have a Muslim character at that point in the movie. There was already a canon, or it was one of the films in that canon about you know, gang life in Los Angeles. I was only going to add this one little piece, and I'll just say it really fast, is the way I knew I could make, or I believed I could make, a film in the time frame that I made it was, I was kind of just naive, which is, I think is actually sometimes a strength, to be stupid, to just be foolish, because I didn't know enough to be afraid. And then I had such success with you helping me on Bilali, and so Kenyatta has kind of become the new you, Katrina. But I also I follow in the footsteps of other Black filmmakers who have done this, and without, outside of the system, eventually got in the system, some of them. But I think of Oscar Michaud, who will counter Birth of a Nation's terrible depiction of Black people with his film Within Our Gates in 1919. So Birth of a Nation should be 1914. So Within Our Gates will come out I think it's 1919. And it will show positive representation of Black people in America. And he counters that negative stereotype. And what Michaud does is he did very much what I did, what I'm doing. He borrowed costumes from people. He made sure he treated his actors really, or his people really well, chauffeured them around, and they make this beautiful story, uplifting Black life, right? Then I think about, the LA Rebellion movement in Los Angeles, where you have filmmakers like Charles Burnett, who do Killer Sheep. You'll have Julie Dash, who will do Daughters of the Dust. Mm-hmm. There are others, right? But you have filmmakers Black filmmakers who will do a lot with a little. I'm talking about the LA Rebellion movement, film movement out of LA, which is, around the time of the Civil Rights Movement in America. And then, or one of the Civil Rights movements in America. And then I'm also thinking about Spike Lee, who will do She's Gotta Have It. And that film was done, I think, under 21 days. And I'm a professor, but also a student of film. So I knew these people had done this. In addition, I'm thinking about, I always say his name wrong, but Ousmane Sembène, who is a Senegalese, the grandfather of Senegalese filmmaking. And I think about how he made films, like how I made Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, with non-actors in their community. Some of the things were Islam. And I kind of just stood on those stories from teaching those films, or stood on that. I don't want to stay on their backs, but I knew I could do something because they had did something and they had such profound impact on the film canon. That's all I was going to say.
That's beautiful. That is excellent. And Kenyatta, would you like to add anything? I saw that you had. Are you okay?
No, I'm just enamored when Aminah shares, information like that. sometimes people think you can't be enamored with your own sister or your own sibling, and I am, and she always gives me my accolades too, and it's like stuff I don't even think about, and I'm like, what? I didn't even think about that. But it's nice to be able to hear something that I have no knowledge of, really. You know what I'm saying? It's like I get to learn from her and every day, so it's really an honor as well.
No, definitely. And so which leads to my last question, because as the amazing producer that you are, when Muslimah's Guide to Marriage came out, and you were very forthright and letting the Muslim community know about the film, but you had mentioned to me maybe a year ago that you had recalled, and then I'll go to Aminah. Recalling that during the Pan-African Film Festival, when Muslimah's Guide to Marriage debuted, that it had debuted alongside blockbuster films like Black Panther.
Right.
And that, and we've had some significant loss, this past year with Chadwick Boseman, the amazing Chadwick Boseman, who was also a Bison, an alum of Howard. So I want you both in closing to talk about, the fact that, this is not an indie film. Aminah is an amazing filmmaker. And this story had to be told, and it had to be told through Aminah's words and with her voice. But talk to us about the significance of being alongside Black Panther.
Well, I'm glad you lifted that up. I hadn't even processed it until later. Like, because as you know, it was a whirlwind. And if you know me as a person, when I'm focused and I'm doing something, I don't think about anything else. I'm just in that. And I have to tell people, I'm sorry if I slighted you or if I moved real quick. And they're like, no, you were great. You were smiling. But in my mind, I'm crazy, right? So after, it might have been months later when all the stuff in the trades was kind of coming out, and then we were seeing stuff from the Pan-African Film Festival. I was like, we literally were in the next theater from the Black Panther. And like literally people were lined up at Black Panther, but we had more people in line in our line. And from Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, right? And people had thought that they were in Muslimah's Guide to Marriage and were in the Black Panther and got out of Black Panther to go to Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. This is what I'm finding out later, because I have friends. Thankfully, we have friends who were like talking. They were like, no, you're in the wrong line. You got to go here, right? And then had people to leave after they saw Black Panther, heard that we had another screening, and then they came to that other screening, because we had 3 shows. So we even showed on February 14th at 9:45 at night. It was like a Wednesday, right? And Akil was basically the MC. He's the MC, but he was the MC for the night. And it was packed, right? Every other 2 shows was sold out. We had to turn people away until we felt horrible. But the fire department was going to close us down. We couldn't have people in the aisles, right? So I say all of that to say Black Panther, Tyler Perry, Muslimah's Guide to Marriage, Aminah Bakir, all of Ava DuVernay, all of these people, we all rooting, like Issa Rae says, we all rooting for everybody Black. We not tripping, we ain't gang banging, we ain't spiritual gang banging, we ain't doing none of that. We happy for all of it, because their success is our success. Our success is their success. That's how we build us as a community, right? So it was beautiful to have Black Panther and Muslimah's Guide to Marriage playing, side by side. And here's the beauty of it. This is how we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, is so relevant. He moved us in so many spaces that we didn't even know how we were getting moved, right? It was like we would find stuff out that morning, and then it would be like, oh, okay, well, you're going to be here. And I remember it was some frantic with that. But Aminah will tell you this. I'm always the person that keeps the calm head. Now, inside I may be crazy, but I always say, Allah got us. Bismillah, we're going to be okay, right? And what happens? Allah has it. So right after the film showed, maybe not even 9 months later, maybe a year later, This is all before the pandemic. We went to, I went to a restaurant on, we all call it Ethiopian Way or Street, right on Fairfax, right? And so it was a sister, her name is Khadija, right? And so she had a restaurant there. So Ryan Coogler was coming out of the restaurant. And I looked at, you know, how you look at somebody, you go, that person looks familiar, but I'm not a starstruck person. That's just not who I am as at all, right? Maybe Idris Elba might get a little Denzel, maybe, but I'm still gonna greet them like they're fam, right? He greeted me like I was family, like I was his cousin. He said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Hey, how you doing? It's good to see you." And we just kept on pushing. And I thought about it. Somebody said, "No, it was Ryan Coogler." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I did an on social media and said, @Ryan Coogler. You may never see this, but I wanted to just say, I saw you here, blah, 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 blah. You greeted me like I was fam. It was good to see you, fam. And then I just left it at that. But I'm saying all of that to say this. Allah puts us all in the place that we're supposed to be. I have no doubt, and I'm going to end on this note, and Aminah can take it. I have no doubt, just like Ryan Coogler and his wife, let's lift his wife up, because his wife had his back, and he says that openly. He was broke, okay? And she is the one who supported and helped, and they got to this level, right? There is no doubt in my mind that Aminah will move into that realm, and we will be dealing the same way. But here's the thing. As the Bakirs, we know the community is first. Whatever we get, if we blow up, everybody coming. That's how everybody coming. Everybody gonna have a role. If you're an artist, if you're a person who, whatever your craft is, we're gonna figure out a way. Just like how MC Hammer and all of them, but we're not gonna go broke by doing it. But how MC Hammer put people on, we're gonna put people on. And that's the way that you build generational wealth, and that we as a community, we're not going to be talking about Black folks' plight 50 years from now, inshallah, right? We hope to be what we were when we had Black Wall Street, when we had, Tulsa, Oklahoma, when we had our spaces. We're going to get to that, inshallah.
I would just add very briefly, that on that note, okay, so as far as it relates to Black Panther, when we were showing at the Pan-African Film Festival, which was a blur for me, but I just remember so many beautiful moments of my family, particularly I'm thinking of my brother Donald, who was just selling tickets. And, I remember at one point, like Bilalian, the film was sold out, right? And I don't know, real quick, Katrina, if I ever shared this story with you about Bilalian when it was at the Pan-African Film Festival. There was a time when I got to the theater and I was a little bit late. Usually we would come, me and Tina, who edited Bilalian, when we got to the theater to check it. And I remember I was in line and I went and I got in the wrong line or something. And I asked the attendant or one of the people who worked there where I was supposed to be. And he said, "Oh, you here for Bilalian?" He was like, "The line for Bilalian." And then he does this whole thing where he goes, he does this, he puts his hand and he goes, "The line for Bilalian is," and it was this huge line, like a blockbuster line. And I remember that, so I say that story for a reason. It was Charles Burnett, who's from the movement of the LA Rebellion movement, who I have great affinity for, who sees this happen, sees the attendant say, "The line for Bilalian is over here," was, that's the thing about being a filmmaker. When your film is about to show, you're so concerned about the technical. I wasn't as concerned, I should have been, about the audience, but to see people show up for the movie, it was just like overwhelming. It touched me so deeply. I had the same experience with Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. I came to the film, my friends from film school were there. I see the sign on the board and I realized they explained to me, "Oh yeah, there's a line. So you can go in because you're the filmmaker, but there's a line to get in your movie." And one of my friends who's a director, directs like Brooklyn, like all these TV shows. She was like, I think Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She was like an American Housewife or something. My friend Jan Arnold, she goes, "This is your movie." And and her partner, Patty. They go, this is your film. These people are here to see your film. Similar, it was the same experience. And I remember thinking, wow, like, this is crazy. This is like the craziest luck, right? And a blessing, right? The thing I want to add to that is when we're showing, I sneak off. I got a text message saying, go to this theater. Chadwick Boseman is going to be at this theater. It was a sneak text. During the Pan-African Film Festival, Chadwick Boseman actually shows up, and I go to the theater and catch him at one of the screenings. So I'm just so glad that I got to see him. I had never seen him before in person. I don't think, I think that was my first time. So I remember that moment too. I have it on tape, and just, the idea, obviously we never saw that happening. His passing, may Allah be pleased with his soul, and have comfort on his family. Then to be maybe 6 months later in New York, and the film Our Muslim's Guide to Marriage is showing, and this Muslim sisters get up in Q&A and say, this movie? She wants to know, when was the movie coming out? I love when people talk about, like, this is from I think it's Chinamami, is it Adichie? Chinamami Adichie? Am I saying her name right? I always say her name. The sister everybody knows, the Nigerian author, Chimamanda. She says that how Nigerians critique her work and start taking ownership of it and telling her how, this is a paraphrase, how they see that her stories ending. This is how I felt. So we're in New York, somebody's just seen Muslims Guide to Marriage, and they're being, it's beautiful, Muslim sister, she's like, gets up and she's like, this is my Black Panther. This is my Black Panther. When is this coming out? And I remember sitting there for years. I showed this video where Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie is talking about how people have taken ownership of her work. And I'm like, I love it. She's taking ownership of this movie. And she's, that's the highest compliment, because we know the success of Brian Coogler, who is a Trojan as well as myself, with Black Panther. Why people like Black Panther, and I'm a professor, so I'm sorry I'm lecturing you, is because why I got up out of my office at 9 o'clock at night, don't ask me why I was at work at 9 o'clock at night, and went to see a screening of Black Panther with the BSU at Cal State LA, was because I knew that the movie, this is before my film was out, but I knew that the movie, this was an Alhambra that we went, this was a cultural moment. This was a moment. It was an event. I go and see this movie with, I think it was 100 BSU students. And I look back on that in the pandemic and say, oh, I'm so glad I didn't old lady out and go home. I'm so glad I went with my students to see this movie at a theater. To have someone say my film was even in the peripheral view of that is an honor. So that's all I'll say is, inshallah, you'll come see the film. And I really appreciate you, Sister Katrina, for inviting us. And I also want to just lift up that the movie is not, this is more than a movie. It's a movement. Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, it's an honor and privilege being here with both of you. We've known each other primarily most of our lives. You both, of course, known each other all your lives, but
I don't know Kenyatta.
I was going to say,
I don't know
until 4 years, right? Like, Kenyatta was 4 when you knew her, right? The impact, like, my 8-year-old Rakaya, she's listening in, she asked, well, was that before Chadwick Boseman died? So just the impact, the representation of BMWs, right? Mm-hmm. Black Muslim women in film is so critical. So on that note, everyone, limle.com, LAMMLE.com, Muslimah's Guide to Marriage. Go to muslimahsguidetomarriage.com.
Absolutely.
Purchase your mask. You still have to wear them, even if you're fully vaccinated when you're outside or indoors. And just spread the love. Get your tickets. It is running at the Limle until May 27th, 2021.
We have paper dolls too. I'll send you some paper dolls. Muslimah's Guide to Marriage paper dolls I'll send for Rakaya.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, paper dolls. Paper dolls are amazing. So you have to purchase paper dolls too, especially with this pandemic.
We have them on the website. We can, I don't know if they're for sale, but we do. I'm sure we have them available.
You can just put them in your package. If folks order a t-shirt or a mask, we'll just put that in there. So it's very cute. It's like a leotard, because she's not naked. There's a leotard, and then you get to build her costumes or her more of her clothing as well. So Rakaya would definitely love that as well. And we want to thank you, Katrina. We really appreciate you. You know, sometimes when people are friends, they don't always lift up, and we consider you more of a sister, you know, as well, because we've known you for so long. But we really appreciate you extending, you know, the ability to be able to, just to talk with you, because we don't get to talk a lot, right? You're doing so much, working on your doctorate and all the things that you got to do.
Congratulations on that.
Congratulations. We're so proud. So the community is proud. And we just thank you for, you know, really just having.
Hey, tell me, have you seen her?
Thank you.
So go to laemmle.com. laemmle.com to see the film.
Thank you both so much.
I'm Muslimah. Hey, tell me, have you seen her?
We did all of you.
I need a queen, not a diva.
Muslims say,
I'm looking for a Muslimah, a
and for
believer.
our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, our
Tell me,
audience
have
at
you seen her?
NNPA.
I'm looking for a believer.
Peace be unto you.
Yo, tell me, have you
Muslim
seen
Journal,
her?
thank
A
you for the
Muslimah.
opportunity.
Thank you, Muslim Journal.
Thank you, Muslim Journal. Assalamu alaikum.
What's the other organization's name, really quick?
It's NNPA.
Love her man, cause her man love
Thank you,
God first. Now
NNPA
that's a
as
love
well.
affair.
Thank you, NNPA as well. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Crowd and I'm trying not to stare.
Yes, the NNPA has been around for years. It is NNPA is our national news paper publishing association, Black press, basically, and it's led by Ben Chadler. Yeah, so the National Newspaper Publishers Association.
With the opposite sex. Top notch conversation, I'm attracted to your intellect.